All right, let's jump right in. Today's explainer is honestly such a treat because we're going to deconstruct a piece of source material that, at first glance, looks like your standard, gentle children's story. It's a tale called The Great Map in the Magic Word. But what we're actually going to discover together is that this seemingly simple story about a little bunny on a walk is a masterfully crafted example of epic narrative structure. It is literally running the exact same ancient myths and grand adventure engines that we see in massive blockbuster films, just scaled down to a really beautiful, accessible level. So let's break it down.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our map for analyzing Pip's quest. We'll start with step 1, the call to adventure. Then we'll move into 2, finding a loyal friend, followed by 3, facing the muddy trial, and finally wrap up with 4, the ultimate treasure revealed. So part 1, the call to adventure. Let's set the stage and actually meet our unlikely hero. To really appreciate what's happening in this text, we have to look at it through a very specific analytical lens. I like to call it the micro-hero's journey. We all know the classic hero's journey, right? The protagonist gets pulled from their ordinary world, faces terrible trials, and eventually returns forever changed. Well, what the author does here is take that massive, world-ending framework and expertly scales it down to fit a gentle, everyday storyline. Our hero is Pip. He's this curious little bunny living in the cozy, bright, totally safe valley of Wordland. But then we get the inciting incident, a dusty golden map belonging to the wise owl. This map promises a grand adventure, literally transforming a mundane morning into an epic quest for magical word gems. It's the exact same narrative engine as epic fantasy, just miniaturized.
And this timeline brilliantly illustrates exactly how that geographical and chronological progression plays out, directly following the Wise Owl's golden map. Look at the flow here. We start in the absolute safety of Pip's home in Hour 1. Then, by Hour 2, he crosses the boundary into the unknown, the Whispering Woods. Hour 3 brings us right to the central conflict at the Muddy Bridge, and it all culminates at the Whispering Tree in Hour 4. You see, this isn't just a random afternoon stroll. It is a meticulously structured pathway specifically designed to push our hero out of his comfort zone step by step, environment by environment.
And what really makes Pip such a fantastic protagonist for this micro-journey is his foundational resilience. I mean, before he even steps out of his front door, he grabs his tiny backpack, ties his shoelaces, and confidently declares, "I can do it." There's zero reluctance here. The author deliberately strips away that usual refusal of the call trope we always see in older myths, and instead models this incredibly eager, positive attitude. It's such an empowering start, and it gets us rooting for him immediately. Let's see what happens once he actually hits the road.
Which brings us to part 2, finding a loyal friend. Our hero formally crosses the threshold and forms an epic alliance.
Right as Pip enters the rustling, secretive, whispering woods, he runs into the classic ally archetype. A squirrel named Sammy literally drops down from a branch and halts him in his tracks. Now, what's really great about this interaction in the source material is Sammy's reaction to the map. He takes one look at it, his eyes go wide, and he instantly recognizes the massive scale of this adventure. He basically insists, saying, "Of course you cannot go alone, we can go together." The text uses this exact moment to establish a key rule. Epic journeys absolutely require teamwork.
So why is this companion so vital to the narrative? Well, let's break down the thematic benefits derived right from their interaction on the path. First off, Sammy provides mutual encouragement. When you're facing a grand adventure, the sheer scale of it suddenly becomes way more manageable when you share the burden. The hero is no longer isolated. But perhaps most importantly, and we're going to see this in just a second, an ally offers help, laughter, and resilience when you inevitably take an accidental fall. It's a structural necessity for the plot, but also a really powerful thematic message for us as readers.
All right, moving on to part 3, facing the muddy trial. The stakes are about to be raised.
Now, what's really interesting about this part of the journey is how it handles the narrative climax. Every hero's journey has to have an ordeal, right? A real moment of danger. Here, our heroes hit a wide, muddy stream crossed by an old, moss-covered bridge. Let's walk through the physical action of this ordeal step by step. Step 1. They have to step super lightly on this slippery green moss, and the bridge is creaking and wobbling, which builds the tension perfectly. Step 2. The inciting incident of the climax hits. A strong gust of wind blows past, a totally uncontrollable external force. Step 3. Disaster. Sammy loses his balance and just splashes right into the deep mud. And finally, Step 4. The resolution. Pip springs into action, finds a long branch, and rescues his friend with a mighty heave. The author brilliantly orchestrates this to show exactly how fast a fun journey can run into scary, unforeseen obstacles.
But look at the aftermath. This is without a doubt my favorite part of the source material. Sammy is sitting there on the riverbank, completely covered in mud, blinking, and he just pops up and says, "That was fun." And then both friends just burst out laughing. This is such a deliberate choice by the author. Rather than lingering on the fear of falling or how cold the mud is, the story chooses to model emotional resilience. They take a moment of potential trauma and instantly turn it into a moment of shared play. And that is a huge real-world takeaway. Obstacles and mistakes, they aren't the end of the world. With the right attitude and a loyal friend by your side, they're really just another memorable part of the adventure.
Finally, Part 4, The Ultimate Treasure Revealed. The trial has been passed, and it is time for the reward. So, after washing off all that mud, Pip and Sammy transition from the shadowy woods into this warm, sunlit meadow. They've finally reached the great whispering tree and the wise owl. And the owl points them toward a sparkly chest resting on a bed of soft moss. Now this is where we see a truly brilliant subversion of expectations. I mean, think about it. The expected treasure in literally any epic quest is gold coins, silver, or jewels, right? But the actual treasure they find inside this chest? Glowing, colorful books, and sweet berries. So the crucial point is how the story executes this incredible bait and switch. It uses all the visual language of pirate maps and hidden loot to actually deliver a core allegory about the true value of literacy and nourishment.
And the wise owl just drives this moral home perfectly. As the two friends sit down, eating their berries and opening up their first magical book, the owl tells them, "Play and read, and you will grow smarter every day." The text makes it absolutely crystal clear that learning words, sharing stories, and expanding your mind, that is the actual reward. The physical journey across that scary, muddy bridge, that was just a prelude to the intellectual journey that's kicking off right now as they open those pages. It is just a beautifully crafted message wrapped up in a highly structured, engaging narrative framework. Which brings us to the end of our explainer. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with this question. What adventure will your next book take you on? Because just like Pip and Sammy, we all have access to these magical word gems that can transport us to our own whispering woods and golden trees. The map is literally in your hands. Thank you so much for joining me today as we deconstructed this fantastic text. Keep exploring, keep analyzing, and as always, keep learning. Catch you next time.